Greetings, everybody. This is Dr. Mel here. So excited for our day one series. I ain't never scared. An IG Live, Facebook Live, LinkedIn Live, YouTube Live. I'm everywhere. But this is a live series on how to handle teacher and staff resistance to equity-focused initiatives. This live will be happening every single week where we're talking about why you should not be afraid, why you should have the tools you need to handle resistance. Because one thing we've got to know is when we're doing the work of equity, remember, equity is providing fairness, is providing equal access, is providing equal opportunity and space for belonging, right? Where people can be in a space in schools, our young people, and even the teachers and adults who serve them can show up in a space that is fostering equity and see all of their young people thrive. We've been, I believe, so indoctrinated to actually believe that these gaps are never going away, that we're always going to have somebody falling in between the cracks. And so with that mind frame and with that mindset, it tends to keep us in the status quo. So we continue to do the same things we've always done, wondering why we don't get the results that we truly deep down inside should want for our young people. What are those results? We should want them to be in spaces where they are excited to learn. Why? Because learning is espoused in joy. Learning is rooted in curiosity. Learning is normalizing failure, not the person as a failure, but failure happens along the pathway towards learning. The more we normalize that, the more we increase the confidence and the competence of our young people. So the reason why I came up with this idea to create a space where we discuss how to handle resistance is because sometimes we tend to blame teachers, we tend to blame staff members, we sometimes blame parents, even students, and this is for my leaders, right? We're blaming all these other places, all these other people for why everyone's not excited about your idea for equity. Right? You've been to the conference, right? You've been among the people. You've learned new things. You've taken a course. You have gotten a certificate. You've been on an IG live, right? You've been in a space where fire has been ignited inside of you. But everybody else doesn't have that same fire. Some people are so entrenched in the pain points that they're experiencing within their schools, within their district offices or other spaces, that even though what you got is good, even though the ideas you have could really work and spark some change where we see our young people actually flourish in their academics, they flourish in their social emotional development, they flourish in relationships, they flourish outside of schools, right? You want these things to happen where you have this as a norm, but what we have to realize is that everybody's not on the same boat as you. So what do you do when you don't have everyone on the same boat as you, right? And as the leader, I hate to see leaders who have had such passion for the work become so inundated, I can't say the word, so overwhelmed, let me go with that. So overwhelmed with the work and the bureaucracy of being a leader that they miss the spark and passion for actually seeing change. And I get it. I empathize with our leadership. I focus primarily on our instructional leaders, right? Because that was the space that I was in instructional leadership. So helping teachers, helping them to develop their capacity to lead in culturally responsive ways inside the classroom. And so if leadership doesn't have that support from teachers to carry out these equity-based initiatives, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. I was coaching a group on last Friday, or the Friday before is when we had this particular conversation. And there was this notion that we had to have a conversation. We had to have a come into Jesus moment. We had to have some kind of dialogue with our staff because there was a gap between the leadership's expectation, their fire, right? Because they're doing culturally responsive teaching and leadership in this district that I'm working with. So they're pushing it all the way around from the top. I hate to say the bottom, but in that hierarchy, from leadership to staff to teachers into the classrooms. But there was a gap. And so now you've got some teachers who are engaging in harmful practices, per the words of this leader. And so one thing that it brought to mind as I was talking with her and listening to her, and not trying to diagnose her, but just listening and understanding her perspective, is that they don't buy in to her vision. They might have bought in, they might have been on board at one point, but the buy-in has fizzled. There has been so much going on, whether it's teacher turnover, whether it's a disconnect between families and school staff and teachers, whether there is some leadership styles that are not conducive to really bringing buy-in and increasing morale, whatever the case may be, this is happening everywhere. Hence the reason why we are having, one of the reasons, right, because it's a complex issue, one of the reasons why we have so many educators and counselors and even leadership leaving the school districts. And I'm not just talking about statistic wise and what happened during COVID, right, when it was at its height, because there is still COVID going around. But I'm talking about what I know to happen with the clients that I'm working with, right? They're actually having to deal with high staff turnover. And so now we've got to get down to the nitty gritty of what is happening and what is going on that is facilitating this kind of environment that is causing this thing to happen. And so as we think about it, one thing that I learned, I was blessed to go to be a part of another SEL team, right? So I do some consulting work with this company. It's hip hop and SEL, and it's an amazing company. And she flew us out, and we had a retreat, and she trained us or gave us this professional development from another woman, right? Who is an amazing, amazing woman in professional learning. And one thing, this wasn't something new that I learned, but this was a refresher and a fresh outlook on how we do what we do with adults. She brought back adult learning theory, right? And so I've had some people like inbox me, like, what is this you're talking about? Adult learning theory, andragogy, right? And so in this IG Live series, we're going to be focusing on the 5 concepts of adult learning theory. Why is this important? Because if you don't understand how adults learn, what motivates them, how to get them to buy in to what you're selling, quote unquote, how to get them to really be excited about the new equity initiative, whether you're bringing in culturally responsive teaching, whether you're bringing in restorative practices, whether you're bringing in transformative social emotional learning, whatever it is that you are doing, you've got to know how to reach the adults who will be the first facing to the students. You've got to know how to reach them first. Because I can remember being in the classroom or being in an instructional coach role, instructional leadership role. And I can remember my principal and my assistant principals over the years, and I've been in education since 2008. I can remember over the years them bringing us something new. And sometimes I had no real feeling or attachment to what they were bringing in, but I could see the other folks around me. You could see the eyes rolling, like, here we go. Something else that the education field is trending on. Here's something else our district wants to put out. Here's something else they're spending millions of dollars on that's not going to work. Why? Because it's a pattern. The staff members, the people that have been in the trenches, who have been doing the work, who have gone through initiative after initiative after initiative, they actually see, oh, this is a pattern. They bring in something new, they get all excited about it, and then what happens? It's gone. We don't deal with it anymore. We don't see it anymore. The talk about it goes down. We even see that now. Oh, she was from, I believe it was Teachers College. Oh, y'all, it left my brain. It was a reading program. I think her name is Lucy Calkin. And I'm probably saying, now I got to look it up. Once it gets in my mind, I've got to know what it is. Yeah, so she did this thing on, and I never had to do her work, but it was on reading and writing and her curriculum and the reading and writing project at the Teachers College at Columbia University. Now all of that, thank you. Hey, Ebony. Now all of that is gone, right? There it's become problematic. It's not useful. I never used it, so I won't speak on it in terms of experience. But the point is, there are a lot of fads in education that happen. But the fad now, or what people may perceive to be a fad, is equity, right? When COVID came, when all the pandemics, right? It wasn't just the medical or the health pandemic. We had the racial pandemic. Nothing new was actually happening, right? There was nothing new. Sorry, Instagram. I hope y'all there. Okay, nothing new was happening, but things were being illuminated in a brighter light, right? So then you had all these companies bringing their equity statements, their DEI statements. Everybody is now pushing for equity in our schools, equity in healthcare, equity in our government, equity in the police system. Like equity was just everywhere. You could see that word everywhere, or you saw diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, everywhere, right? And so seeing that word has now pushed it out into the world as a trend. Also because many folks didn't walk it like they talked it, like just being honest. They did a lot of this, but the actions of their companies, the actions of their schools, specifically for us in this conversation, the actions in their leadership roles, the things they spent money on, didn't look like they were focused on equity. So now you as a leader, or is in your experience, your leaders in the building are excited. Thank you, Shireen, are excited about doing this equity work because you've been to the spaces where you've seen the research, you've talked to practitioners, right? Not just people who are in universities and colleges and oh, you can't hear me? Goodness, hold on, y'all. Not in universities and colleges, but these are people that are actually in the classroom, right? And so now, oh, hold on, LinkedIn. I think they're having a problem hearing me. Oh, I don't know what happened. Give me 1 second, y'all. Give me 1 second. Give me one. Y'all help me remember where I left off to. Instagram, I'm going to come back on. So sorry. I don't know what happened, you all. This sound sometimes goes out. Nobody called me this time and interrupted me, so I'm not sure why, but I'm going to try it again. Let me go back live with my Instagram people real quick. I was on a roll, but I don't want them to miss the roll. Thank y'all for being patient. Almost there. All right, let's try this again. Okay, let me set it up because my little thing broke, so it's all jacked up. All right. All right. Thank you, Miss Tyson. Thank you, Dr. Tyson or Miss Tyson. I want to get all the titles correct. Utmost respect. Thank y'all for waiting for me to come back on. Now I lost my train of thought. Y'all. But thank you all for telling me my sound was off because I would have hated to be talking and no one can hear me. So thank you for coming back. But the point is, they were doing all this talk, all this conversation. I know where I was. Equity is the fad word. So now you that are excited, you that have listened to practitioners who have been to conferences, like when I went to State of Black Learning in Pittsburgh, oh my God, mind blown. Amazing to be among people who get it, right? So I'm excited about all the things that I can present to my school clients, to my district leaders, to my principals and my instructional coaches, and even my teachers that I'm working with. I'm excited, right? I'm amongst people who got the same energy level, right? People who are on the same track of, we don't want to just talk this talk of equity and make it sound good for a good real clip, right? We don't want to talk this talk. We got lives. Like, we're in a state of real life emergency in these educational streets. So we've got to not just be talking, but we've got to walk it like we talk it. I did a whole, as you can see, I like using the hip hop at the beginning, right? But I did a whole DEIPD, and the first part of it was walk it like I talk it, because we got to examine what we're doing, right? And so you have been there. You've done the work in terms of expanding your professional repertoire, your toolbox, what you are aware of. You've gotten advice. You've even talked to some of the conference presenters. You've connected in communities online. Like, I'm in Arkansas, but there are people online I'm connected with all over the country and even the world in different spaces, right? So I'm getting energy and perspectives and experiences from other folks. But then when I want to bring it back to my space, it's crickets, right? It's crickets. And so if we're not careful, what begins to happen is the energy, the excitement that you have for something that you know is what's best for your young people. What do I mean? It's equity. It's providing that fairness and that open door for your babies in the building to be successful in whichever way they pursue, in whichever way they want to express their genius, right? But you get it. You're getting it. You don't have all the answers, but you're excited. But then you meet resistance. And what will happen is, if you don't counter that resistance or even pre-plan for that resistance using adult learning theory, right? It's not the only thing you want to use, but it's a sharp tool in the toolbox. Adult learning theory, meaning that you are going to present this information in a way that will motivate and engage the people who have to carry out the work. The people've got to carry out the work. And what happens, like, I even did a cohort this summer. And I've done a couple of my teaching from the soul coaching cohorts over the last couple of months. It's been a real blessing to be able to expand and do the work in more spaces. But one thing that I told one of the schools that I was working with is that I don't want you to make teachers or make leadership be a part of this cohort because you've got something to prove, right? As a district or as a school, you're trying to improve this score or this data piece, or you may be cited by the state or the district or your central office, and now you're in a panic and you're going to sign these people up to do this equity work. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. So thankfully, thankfully, most of them listen. Not everybody, but most of them listen. Why is this so important? Because people have got to see the need for equity and at least have a space of readiness and willingness to engage in it. Because guess what? This ain't just checklist work. This is not just checklist work. This is heart and soul work. You can't be equitable without a soul. That's why we're scholars for the soul. You can't do equity without a soul. Because with no soul, you have no mind, no will, no emotions. You don't see the young people as valuable. You don't see their behavior as a cry out for a need that they have. You can't empathize with them. You don't know how to create spaces of belonging because you don't even know how to check the space you have to see how you are working against belonging, because there's no soul. There's no soul. So you got to know that this work takes soul work. But when you're doing this work with adults, you got to understand adults. So the goal of what we're doing here today is we're talking about explaining this theory of adult learning theory and highlighting. I'm going to give the 5 components of adult learning theory. But then every time we come back, remember, this series is going to be all month long. And I'm going to slow it down and break it down into chunkable, digestible parts and give you some action steps that you can take back into your practice. Okay. But before I get into that, I want to let you know there was a study published in the Journal of Educational Change in 2019. Okay. And it found that teachers who were provided with I need y'all to hear me, a clear understanding of the reasons behind educational initiatives were more likely to embrace the change and, here we go, implement it effectively. So we want them to embrace it, but we want them to do the work. Excuse me, y'all. I'm getting over a sickness this week. And this was in 2019. 2019, study published. I'm going to say it one more time for those just popping in. A study published in the Journal of Educational Change in 2019 found that teachers who were provided with a clear understanding of the reasons behind these initiatives are more likely to embrace the change, hey sis, and implement it effectively because they get it, right? They get the need, they get the why, they get the how, they get the team dynamic. So who can I tap into when I need resources, when what you're telling me to do ain't quite working right? Who can I tap into to help me out, right? I'm understanding it, and I'm able to now navigate through something that's new, because with change, with things that are new, depending on your experience with dealing with new things, will really indicate how willing you are to journey through the new. Because new stuff can be hard. New stuff can be scary, confusing, isolating. There are a lot of emotions, and we don't like to talk about emotions from a professional perspective because we think that's too personal. So we should keep our personal and professional separate. But in my practice, in the work I'm doing, consulting and coaching with schools and districts, I'm letting them know, I'm trying to bring awareness, like many others in my field are doing, that the personal's got to go with your professional. As a human with a soul, you can't separate your soul from the work that you do out here in these schools. And the people that do separate their souls from the work they're doing out here in these schools are the reasons why we have harm being perpetuated over and over and over and over, because we become soulless. We become heartless, right? Some of us didn't mean to get this way. We just tired. Some of us just exhausted. Some of us have put our heart and soul into it, and it's kind of gotten stomped on, right? And this is why I talk about the importance of soul care. I talk about the importance of advocating for yourself. I talk about the importance of sometimes you got to leave that toxic environment, because guess what? I had to. I'm not telling you something that I hadn't had to do. I had to do it. Because why? My professionalism, my value, the value that I brought to the table was being taken advantage of. Not here today. I waited, I advocated, I asked, I did all the things, but then I had to decide. So back to the point is, when we're not engaging our soul in these new initiatives for equity, we will see people not want to do what you asking them to do. And everybody not lazy. We can't keep saying that. All these teachers not lazy. Now, some may be, because you're just not going to have perfect anywhere. Okay, that's real. But everybody's not lazy. Everybody doesn't not care, right? Double negative, English major, right? It's not that everyone doesn't care anymore. It's not that everyone's so jaded. You haven't given them the why. You haven't given them the adult learning theory, the andragogy, just like pedagogy with children, pediatrics, andragogy, the key principles. So let me give y'all these key principles real quick, because it's 5 and I'm not going to be on here all night. Excuse me, y'all. I feel like I had COVID earlier this week. It was horrible. I'm coming through it, but the cough is wanting to linger. So excuse me if I'm coughing more than I normally would. But share this live for those who are watching. Thank you for tapping in. Share it with somebody, especially if you got some leaders that could use a little support and encouragement and some practical tips to buying in, to getting that buy-in higher. Okay, so here are the five tips. Now, before I do that, here's a report. I have another statistic from the Learning Policy Institute in 2018. And PD programs, meaning professional development workshops, cohorts, whatever they got y'all doing, or whatever leaders you have your staff doing, those PD programs that emphasize the rationale and purpose of new teaching practices lead to higher teacher morale. That's number one. So you got good souls. You got souls on fire and improve student outcomes, right? So when you are working deliberately to serve the adults well, serve them well, they will, in most cases, embody your practice of serving them well and serve their children well, right? Because they will see that this is the culture of this space. This is the way we do things. This is the way we engage with people. We let them in on what's going on. We invite them to the table, or they help us construct the table. We share tools. We share power, because this is how we do it, right? This is how we do it. Dun, dun. This is how we do it. Okay? And so when you do that, you have a higher teacher morale, improve student outcomes. Okay. So here are the 5. Number 1, self-concept. And I'm just going to give a brief definition. Then the 2 that are our focal points for today, I'm going to close out with those, right? I thought to myself, y'all, real quick, that it was going to be 30 minutes. It's not going to be 30 minutes, but it's not going to be longer than an hour. So stay with me if you can stay with me. Okay. If not, you can go back and watch the replay. Self-concept is number 1. Self-concept is number 1. Adults need to be seen and treated as capable of making decisions, and they want to be responsible for their decisions. Now, again, I need y'all to stay with me. This is coming from a place of good intentions, believing that most adults who serve our young people want to do the job they're doing and want to do that job well. I do know there are some that do not. I do know there are some in school spaces that are there to harm children or certain groups of students, right? We're not talking about them right now. We're not going to even focus on that. We're going to focus on the ones who actually want to be there, may be a little bit jaded, may be tired, they may be getting towards burnout a little bit, but their heart and soul is in the work, right? That's who we're talking about, okay? So I just had to bring that caveat in, because I don't need nobody in the comments talking about, well, I know everybody's not on the same train. I promise I do. Been there, done that, still deal with it in my line of work. But number 1 is self-concept. So they want to be seen and treated as capable of making decisions. But if you don't let them in on the decision making, how do you mirror that? So that's a question to ask. How am I treating the adults in my building as though they are capable of making decisions? Number 2, experience. This is the second concept of adult learning theory, experience. Adults bring a wealth of experiences to the learning process, and those experiences should be tapped into. Point blank, period. Don't just know that they have all these experiences and you are not using those experiences within the structure of your school building, the way you are doing things, right? They must be tapped into. So I used to do this exercise, or I've done this exercise before, and I think some of you may have seen it floating around on Facebook. There's an exercise where you put teachers, or not just teachers, you put school staff or whomever, it could go at any organization or any professional space. You put people into groups. They can be in groups by like departments, grade levels, whatever. And they outline like all of their experience. They outline their degrees, where they've worked, how long they've been doing the thing, what grades they've taught. And you get to see on paper the wealth of experience that you've got in your building, that you've got on your team, right? And it was a very a space full of gratitude for the leader that brought me in to do the PD, to see, man. I mean, I knew some of them went to school here, or I knew they had this degree, But to see all the different types of degrees they had, the different types of certifications that they had, how long they had been teaching, what parts of the world they had been teaching, and I'm not tapping into that goal. I'm not tapping into that. I'm losing out. And that's why some teachers don't feel like they want to stay in the space that they're in, because the wealth of knowledge they have is lying dormant. That's just like if you've got a star, you got LeBron, but the people over in another country don't know LeBron, right? Say it's not social media world. They don't know who he is, but they invite him on their team, and he's just sitting there not being used, right? Not being used, because nobody knows the championships he's won. Nobody knows the things he's done, right, Brooke? Feeling thrown away. So he's sitting there probably getting more frustrated, probably ready to quit, because he knows that he's got the juice. He knows he's got the talent. He knows he's got the connections to make things happen, but nobody's tapping into it. So think about that analogy when you look at and you work with and partner with the teachers and staff that are in your building or on your team, right? This even goes for those in district offices who have people that you are supervising. You should be tapping into the wealth of their experiences for the learning process, right? Number 3, readiness to learn. Readiness to learn. Adults become ready to learn when they perceive the information or skills as immediately applicable to real life. If you are giving them something and they cannot connect it back to how I'm going to use this in my classroom and why is it going to make a difference, you're going to have them slowly fade away. They may be excited. They just may be good learners, so they participate. They engage in the PD. It was fun. You put a game in or you had some good conversation. It was cool, but then, okay, now what? So I'm not buying in to this in a long-term way because I don't see how it is immediately applicable to real life. Number 4, orientation to learning. Adults are problem-centered rather than content-centered in their learning, meaning that the work has to be revolved around what problem is this going to solve for me in my building or in my classroom, right? So they're thinking about, like, we're as adults, we make like thousands of decisions a day, especially as teachers or as parents or caregivers. Any space where you have other human connections and you're responsible for things, you make thousands of decisions a day. And a lot of those decisions, the majority of those decisions are about solving some sort of problem. So that's where their mind is at work. I'm always having to troubleshoot. Like I'm the key troubleshooter in my classroom. Even though students may have some independence, when it all comes down to the bottom of it, they tapping back into me. I'm the key problem solver. So you're learning what we have to do when presenting new things to staff, when presenting equity initiatives. We've got to focus back in on what pain point, what problem is this solving? Okay. And lastly, motivation. Adults are motivated to learn when they see a clear why. Why? Not just, okay, what to do. Why? Why do I need to learn this? Even if it's not a strategy, why do I need to know this? Why is this way of being? Because that's what equity is about. It's about shifting culture, right? And creating space where the ways of being provide belonging and access to all the babies in the space, right? So why do I need to shift to this different mindset, right? So when they are motivated, they see that clear why. So the 2 that are really big for me in today is understanding that if you didn't explain the why, you can't get mad because they won't do what you asked them to do. A way to reduce the resistance. A way to reduce the resistance is getting commitment and buy-in. Research indicates that when teachers understand the rationale and goals of an initiative, they are more likely to commit to it. They exhibit higher levels. Now, will you get everybody? No, it's not a perfect world, y'all. But look at your percentages. Here's something to try that just came up in my mind. But if you're a leader, maybe you could go and do like a pre-survey. right? However you do surveys, a little questionnaire. And ask them, have they heard of if your equity initiative is culturally responsive teaching or transformative social emotional learning or restorative practices or restorative circles, whatever the thing is that you're working on, hip hop and SEL or hip hop and teaching, whatever the equity facing initiative is, ask them, have they heard of it? And if they've heard of it, have they tried it? And if they've not tried it, how willing are you to try this if I asked you to do it right now? You could probably come up with better questions, but those just came off the dome, right? And then present the PD or the staff meeting, wherever you're working this adult learning theory, to try to get them to buy in and begin to see if that changes, if their willingness to at least try this, maybe needing to ask more questions, right? So you could ask them, are you willing to try this? If not, what would you need more of to try it? And they'll tell you, I need to understand what happens if it doesn't work. I need to understand, what do I do if this technology fails? I need to understand what to do if students start trying to fight during a restorative circle. Like, I need to understand this or that. I need to understand why. What is this going to do for our kids in our school building? Right? Because now you're getting closer and closer to the golden ticket, which is buy-in. You want all the teachers to be waving the golden ticket, like, we ready. We are ready, right? But in order to reduce the resistance, they've got to know the why. We can't keep putting things on staff members who already have a plate full of things to do. They've already got a list of 10 things to do, and here you come with 2 more. And you're not taking anything off the list. You're adding more. So now, instead of the 10 that are daunting every day, now they've got 12 to 15, and you want them to do this with excitement. You want them to be motivated because you know this equity initiative is great and grand, and it probably is. I'm not shooting it down. It probably really is. But you don't they're not understanding why and how this change, this new way of being, this new initiative, they don't see why it's going to matter. So now it's up to you. Whether you bring in a consultant like myself or some of my other beautiful people that are on the live that do this work, or whether you work this thing out to where you can clearly explain the why. So here are some suggestions on how to explain the why. Clearly communicate the reasons for the change, right? How is it going to benefit? And you need to think about the benefits. How is it going to benefit the students? Because that's where we start. That's our core. That's what we do this for. I know we need to think about adult learning theory. I know we need to care about the adults, but at the core, it's about these babies. It's about the babies. So how is this going to benefit them? Then how is it going to benefit teachers and staff and the entire school community? What is the bigger picture? And if you can't articulate it, you need to ask somebody. Or maybe you need to flesh it out and sit with it more. Maybe if you can't explain why this initiative is good for students, it's good for families, it's good for teachers, it's good for the entire school community, is it really good? Sometimes we're doing these equity initiatives because we really just want the kids to stop cutting up. We don't really want there to be a space of equity where they actually feel like they belong and they learn how to navigate their emotions in a way that is more healthy. They learn how to partner with adults, to have conversations, to lead, guide, and mentor them towards effective and healthy conflict resolution. We just want them to stop yelling, or we want them to stop fighting. But if we stop and pause to see how it's benefiting everybody in a holistic way, mind, body, heart, and soul, y'all. Bring the soul back into the work that we're doing. We gotta get these folks off our neck. And what do I mean by that? There are people on your neck who are driving you about test scores, who are driving you about all this standardized mumbo jumbo. And I get it. Now, to me, it's not, you're not going to ever make me believe standardized test scores are the barometer for our students' intelligence. I'll never believe that. But I get the position that leaders are in and the pressure that is there from their higher ups and other folks, and even community that looks at these really inequitable and biased report cards for schools and don't even understand how the grades are manufactured. Like, it's a whole complex issue, correct? But what we're thinking about is not that. We're thinking about who are the babies we're serving and what is the experience they're going to have when they leave your school. I remember every one of my schools I went to, from preschool all the way to graduate school. And there are a few impactful adults along the way that I remember, whether for good or for bad, right? There are experiences and memories that I remember, right? So if we're thinking about what is the experience that we want for our young people, and then what is the experience that we can co-create for our teachers and school community to support our young people, then we can communicate why this reason for change is so necessary. So that's number one. Did you explain the why? Clearly communicate the reason for change in a holistic way. Mind, body, and soul, holistic way. Number two, provide research-based evidence and real life examples that demonstrate the positive impact of equity and cultural responsiveness. I'm all about culturally responsive teaching and leadership. That is what I do. Social emotional learning is in that work, because we talk about the emotional brain, we talk about mindset. So I never really say SEL because it's inherently in the work, and we mention it there. But if you're doing culturally responsive teaching, you don't have to have an extra add-on of SEL, because it's embedded in there, because it attends to cognition, the way the brain thinks and feels and experiences the learning environment, right? So I don't want people to think I don't do SEL. I do. And I only do that if someone, but it still will ultimately be culturally responsive teaching. Right? So with culturally responsive teaching, if you are doing this work, you need to be providing your staff members, your teachers, with some research out there. It's plenty of videos. There are plenty of amazing people, excuse me, that are posting videos of them doing different dialogic strategies, different call and response strategies, different ways of scaffolding, of helping to build language and vocabulary. Ask one of these people or show one of their videos to your staff. I did it in my cohort. There's a guy on Instagram that talked about a turn and talk, and he showed how he modeled. I mean, they only showed his face, so the students, you couldn't see them, but you could hear them. But he modeled and went through, because he was actually teaching, how he rolled out this culturally responsive strategy. So he explained it to the kids, did it in a low stakes way, had them practice with it. They repeated the clap after him, did all the things. And then in another video, he brought it back with actual content, right? So if you can show real life examples of teachers, y'all, at this age, at our big old 2023 age in education, we don't have very many excuses. I'm sorry. We just don't. If people are still saying they don't know how, it's because they don't want to know how. I don't care if your school won't buy you good PD. I'm on here. There are plenty of folks on Instagram showing videos of things that they're doing with our Black and brown children. There are plenty of high quality consultants that are doing free webinars. I do some every now and then, right? Or I get on the live, free webinars about how to teach. Like, at this point, what are we doing? At this point, if you want to be culturally responsive, there is spaces out there. Search the hashtag, look for the things. But my point of it all is there are real life examples. If you show these examples, like I did to my cohort 2 weeks ago, I shared my screen, showed the Instagram video of that man. I can't remember his name. He's a Black brother with glasses. He just I won't say he just came out. But I love what he's doing with his fifth graders. think they're 5th grade. Love what he's doing. I'm gonna have to bring him on alive because he's going through all the culturally responsive strategies, and he started from day one building community. It's a beautiful sight to see. Does that mean he doesn't have problems in his class? I'm sure he does. He's dealing with people. Are you good every day? Are you excited and happy every day? No. And your brain might be fully developed. Theirs are not. Right? So we got to have grace with our babies. But back to the point, there are enough real life examples, research-based evidence. Provide this to your staff. Communicate with them, and then leave space for them to either have, I love to do these when I do PDs. I'll come up with a real life type scenario from either my experience or somebody I've been coaching who's told me about an experience, or I may even come up with just an imaginary hypothetical situation that's a problem, right? And we solve it using the new initiative you're trying to bring forth, right? So if I'm doing culturally responsive leadership, or if I'm doing, like, for example, back in May, I went to Ohio, and with their team that serves students experiencing homelessness and their families, I came up with scenarios that would show them how to respond in a culturally responsive way to all the different scenarios, right? Whether there were language differences, whether there were mental, physical, socioeconomic, racial, whatever the differences were. I came up with different ones for them to, as small groups, discuss how, after the things I've taught them about being culturally responsive and some things and strategies and ways of being to adopt, things to unlearn, so that you can be this, right? Not just check stuff off a list and do stuff, but you can be this. Then they were able to work that out in scenarios. They were able to problem solve and even bring their wonderings, right? Because everybody shouldn't be expected to have all the answers all the time, but they brought back their wanderings to the group so we could discuss, right? I didn't even have to do all the talking, but allowing space for them to discuss what are some best practices. And because the group was also diverse, we could have people who wanted to lead the way could come forth and speak, and others sit back and learn, right? So you got to put your staff members, your teachers, in a space where they understand the why. Okay? Because then you can take on the song by Bone Crusher, I Ain't Never Scared, right? You got something new that's about equity. Is new to your building. It may not be new to education, but it's something that needs to be done, and they haven't done it yet. So you're bringing this new thing, right? So I ain't never scared to do it. Why? Because I can back up my why. Not this generic why we talk about all the time. Do you know your why? I mean, that's cool. Let me not say it like that. It's okay to go into your why. However, did you explain the why behind why you're bringing this to the table? Why this way of being is beneficial to the students, teachers, their families, the school? Did you explain why? Did you show examples? Right? Like we say to teachers, give them an exemplar, a rubric. Like, have you done the due diligence to explain why? Have you given the research to show where the gaps are? If you're bringing in culturally responsive teaching and you see that there is a hyper referral of Black students in special education in your building, this is why. This is a huge reason why, because something's not connecting. And we've got to serve our young people, because I can't believe all of these students are appropriately placed, right? So now I need to take a step back and look at the way in which we are engaging young people in the learning environment. Are we giving space for them to receive the benefits of this public education or private or wherever you are? Right? But the children deserve the education once they're in the seats, once they're in the building, once they're signed up on your roll. Right? So what are we doing to ensure that they thrive in that space? Because if we're not aware of that, we will put them out when they don't do the things that we perceive as a good learner, right? Yeah, and see, if they don't perceive students being hyper referred, that's an issue because our state will cite you. Our state will cite you. Now, we don't do a lot of things. We do some things well. We mess up in some ways. You know, I'm in Arkansas, but I know for sure Arkansas will cite you. Now, what happens after that? I don't know, but you under the radar. And nobody really likes the state coming in their building or in their schools or because they be on your neck tough. Right. So that's what they're doing here. I don't know what they're doing other places. But think about that. What are you doing to explain the why? Okay. So that is, I have come to the end. That is the end of the session for today. If you notice, I am wearing a Jackson State University plus me t-shirt. And I didn't plan this at first, but I think for every session, I'm going to wear an HBCU because it is homecoming season right now. And for those who don't know, HBCUs are historically Black colleges and universities. And I have been so privileged and blessed. I did not attend an HBCU. And for that reason, I have been blessed to take quite a few young people on HBCU college tours. And so we went to Jackson State. I think we've been there 2 or 3 times to their high school day. And I haven't done any this year. So I've really made a commitment to try to get back started either next spring or next fall and taking children back down to or up or east to different HBCUs. So you'll see Grambling, you will see Fisk, you will see, I took them to Tennessee State, but I don't have any more t-shirts because that was my first one in like 2013 or 14. So I'll have to buy some new paraphernalia from them. But you'll see, I've taken them to Southern, Xavier. Oh Lord, Southern, Xavier, Fisk, TSU, Grambling, Dillard. Am I missing any, Chris? Chris. Oh, he went downstairs watching football, so he's definitely not gonna hear me. But anyway, so you'll see these. You'll see these for those on LinkedIn and those on Facebook and YouTube. You will see these every week that we have these lives. So stay tuned and stay connected because our next live is going to be about making it apply to real world situations. Or no, did you involve the teacher? So we'll go over that, but then we'll talk about involving teachers in the process. So that will be session 2. So if you stay connected, you'll see the invitation. If you're on my email list, you can also look forward to email blasts, look forward to invitations from those so that you can join. And I think I'm going to do it. Today is the 8th. I think I'm going to do it. I might do it the same time every week. Y'all let me know if you like Sundays or if you prefer a Saturday. Okay, Suzanne, I'm going to have to check that out. Thanks for tapping in. But I'll be back on to talk about more about resistance. And my plan is to also, I've been sick this week, but I did plan to have a resource about resistance. I'm creating like a mini course for leadership. So get connected to my email list. Link is in the bio for wherever you are following me, or scholarsforthesoul.com/links, LINKS, scholarsforthesoul.com/links, LINKS. And you can scroll down and join the list there, and then you'll get a first class invitation to that free mini course for our leadership. But thank you all for coming. Thank you, Instagram, for being here. The sound is so good. I think it's because I've got my stuff set up a little better this time. So thank you all for tapping in with me. I love my Instagram family. Y'all are like my ace boom coons and whatever other stuff you say. But now I am connecting with LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook here on the World Wide Web. So thank you all for tapping in. I look forward to talking to you all on next week. Have a great and beautiful Sunday.